Good day to all of you. My name is Martin Scheck. I'm the Chief Executive of the International Capital Market Association, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. For those of you who are not familiar, the International Capital Market Association is an association of members which looks at market standards in the debt capital markets, with a particular focus on how the primary markets work, the secondary debt markets, the repo and collateral markets, and also the sustainable bond markets. We are a membership association. Our membership encompasses issuers, primary underwriters, secondary banks, brokers, investors of all sorts, asset owners and asset managers, as well as infrastructure providers, a number of the central banks and certain law firms as well. We have members in over 62 different countries, and all of them are interested in making sure that the capital markets in which they operate can operate as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I'm very, very pleased to welcome the Islamic Development Bank. The Islamic Development Bank is a member of ICMA. We're very pleased that you are one of our members. And it's a multilateral development bank, and its role is to work to improve the lives of those that are served by promoting social and economic development in Muslim countries and communities worldwide, and they deliver impact in that respect at scale. It's a truly global institutional. It's headquartered in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, but has major hubs in many other areas, including Morocco, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, Senegal, and a number of other offices, which I'm sure we'll hear more about. And they're very much fostering collaboration between their member nations. And it's important to mention that they are absolutely apolitical. And I think that's an important point. They are a pioneer in various different markets. We're going to hear a little bit more about the Sukuk market, I'm sure, and some of the work that they do there. And they've also been a leading proponent of sustainability and active in the green finance arena, particularly in the green bond market. And I'm particularly pleased to be joined by the Vice President of Finance, the CFO of the Islamic Development Bank, Dr. Zamir Iqbal. And Zamir is, as I said, Vice President of Finance, Chief Financial Officer at the Islamic Development Bank. He's had a long and distinguished career in the development finance world, was heading the World Bank's Global Islamic Finance Development Center in Istanbul, and has early assignments in the World Bank Treasury and Finance and Markets Global Practice. So he has a wide range of experience in the capital markets, in asset management, risk management, and Islamic finance has actually been his research focus, and he's co-authored many articles and books on Islamic finance. So I think we're going to have a very, very interesting discussion. I would like to ask you, Zamir, first of all, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking part here today, of course. We're very much looking forward to the discussion today. And I think, first of all, for our listeners, I've tried to introduce the Islamic Development Bank a little bit, but I know that you will be able to do that so much better than I could. And so for our listeners who are not familiar with your institution, perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about its history, specific mission, and your activities in the capital markets. Welcome again.
Thank you, Martin. It's indeed my pleasure to be here, and thank you. I thank ICMA for giving me an opportunity. I do recall, Martin, that we met last year in Washington during the World Bank IMF annual meetings. And who knew at that time that our next meeting will be a virtual one. But thank you for all your efforts. I know that ICMA has been very active and they have been very supportive of Islamic finance as well. I think you had a very good introduction to Islamic Development Bank, but I would just reiterate, we are not a new kid on the block. We have been here for a long time. We were established back in 1974. We are currently have 57 member countries. Although we are a multilateral development bank, but we are not a regional bank. Our presence and the footprint is all over the globe. ranging from Indonesia to Suriname, and we have our presence there. For all this 45 years or so, our sole objective has been economic development, sustainable economic development. And our main key idea is that we want to create a sustainable future for our member countries, which is driven by innovation, by partnerships, value chains, and all the other key principles of Islamic finance, which promotes asset-based, risk-sharing, ethical, and responsible finance. Now, our priority areas are alleviating poverty, improving health, promoting education, and improving governance. We have mainstream climate action in all our operations. So you can see that we are in line with SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, since the very beginning. Only thing which changes makes that different than the other MDBs, that by our articles we can only deal with Islamic instruments. So that is one of the distinguishing feature which is different than the other MDBs. But otherwise, our mandate and our role is very much like other MDBs, like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and African Development Bank. And we are very much closely in touch with them and collaborating. Just for your sake of information, this year, our president was also the head of all the MDBs, which is basically sets the agenda. And his presidency came during the time of COVID, when the whole MDBs has to collaborate. So our president took the leadership in basically collaborating, bringing all the MDBs on the table to setting up the agenda on the COVID-19. Now, as far as the capital markets are concerned, we had our first public issuance back in 2003. Very simply, a sukuk is an asset-based fixed income security. Although the name sounds exotic, but if you look at the economics of the instrument, it is a plain vanilla bond, but only it has certain features that it backed by the asset, which makes it much more solid. Now, we also, as our mandate, we want to promote the Islamic capital markets, the products, and we have been doing many of these, our activities in developing the regulatory framework in our member countries and non-member countries. In last 2 years, we have held a very senior level events in London as well as Luxembourg, trying to promote, and I'm very thankful that ICMA was part of both of these events. I'm thankful for that. As a result of it, we have seen many non-Muslim countries also engaging in the sukuk, and so far there have been sukuk issuance by UK, Hong Kong, South Africa, and many more. So in that sense, we have been, quite active. And as we engage more in the capital markets, we do see that people or investors are getting to know more about it and getting to appreciate the value proposition which we offer.
Thank you very much. I think it's very gratifying to see that the sukuk framework is becoming gradually more known all over the world, and we're seeing more and more participants in that. And I must say, I think the development banks as a whole have a huge role to play in capacity building and providing this level of leadership in the capital markets that you were mentioning just a few seconds ago. But perhaps now we could develop a little bit more of the discussion specifically around your debt program and your issuance program. You talked a little bit about the issuance of sukuk, but I imagine that it's not solely focused on sukuk, and it'd be very interesting to hear you putting that into context. And also, one of the things that's interesting for us is how do you manage the proceeds and the sectors that you're involved with? Being an Islamic bank, that may well be something that would be interesting to understand for our listeners. And also, I think we've seen a huge increase in the the investor base for Sukuk over the last few years, both from Islamic investors and non-Islamic investors. But I'd be very interested to hear your views. You've got really first-hand experience of selling these products throughout the world on a global basis now. I'd be interested to see how you're seeing that investor base developing and the familiarity with the products developing globally.
Thanks, Martin. We'll be happy to do. As even before coming to IDB, I was involved with Islamic finance at the World Bank. And even at World Bank, we looked at Islamic finance as another, financial engineering, another financial instrument or a structure. We don't look at from purely calling it Islamic or some other, instrument. We look at it from as another financial instrument. Now, from that angle, Skook is not the only instrument which we do. We have a wide range of instruments which we use to mobilize our resources. Skook is primarily the one which has, we do any public issuances. We do have private placement as well. Now, within Skook and private placements, there are different kind of structures. There are some structures which are purely based on underlying pool of assets, which are our development projects, and there are other instruments which do not involve assets, but they do involve some sort of a commodity contract. So yes, to answer your first question, that we not only Skook, but we have a quite a bit different range of instrument which we use. Now, how do we use our proceed? As I mentioned earlier, the core point of Islamic finance is that the financing has to be linked with the creation of real economic activities. We could not be just treat that as a pure money, but we have to use all of our bonds are basically based on a certain set of pool of assets. Now, these pool of assets are basically our development projects in our member countries. These range in different sectors. These are in health, education, infrastructure, and many of the other employment generation program. Now, with our COVID program, our priorities are shifting. We're shifting more towards financing of SMEs because SMEs are supposed to be the growth engine for the growth, and we think we should support them. As far as the as you we have mentioned you have mentioned earlier that we in last year we successfully issued our first green sukuk worth €1 billion, and that the use of those proceeds were committed to be used in the renewable energy, clean transportation, sustainable cities, energy efficiency, pollution prevention, and control environment in terms of a sustainable management of natural living resources and land use, as well as a sustainable water and water waste management across our 57 member countries. Now, after the successful issuance of our green sukuk, this year we issued a special sustainability sukuk, sustainability bond, which was focusing purely on the COVID-related recovery. The response was extremely good. We issued a $1.5 billion back in June, and it was committed to proceed the proceed to be used in different sources, particularly in the healthcare sector and the employment generation, especially on the SMEs and also for the women development and the youth development. So this was the focus of our sustainability bond. So as you can see that our core work business is sustainable development projects, which we do. And by the way, on these projects, many of these projects, we do collaborate with other MDBs, either in the form of capacity building or in terms of co-financing. So we do leverage each other in terms of providing our support to our member countries into the financing. Now, you asked that who are our investors? Now, as our investment community or overall the financial markets get more familiar with Islamic bonds, we do see expansion of investors. And we went to a roadshow during our first Euro Green bond, and I was really very pleasantly surprised at the kind of reception we received from the European investors who are very passionate about development, about climate, about development, and that made our and they responded very well to our issuance. So overall, we were able to attract many new investors. Now, if you look at the general investor base, we have a wide range of investor bases in ranging from our other MDBs, their treasuries, central banks for both our member countries as well as the non-member countries. We also have institutional investors, including pension funds, and as well as some in asset managers. Now, in addition to that, we are attracting some, getting some attraction from the leading bank treasuries. Now, we are a AAA rated bond. I should have mentioned that earlier, that we are a AAA rated institution. We are rated AAA by all three rating agencies, and we have a consistently for more than 10 years are consistently AAA with a stable outlook, and that gives our investors a very good value for the money, because they believe that through their investment, they're contributing towards the very noble cause of development in the African countries, in the Asian countries, and all over the globe. So we have a wide range of, now with the issuance of our green and sustainable, our investor base is much more expanding, and we hope to continue attracting other investors.
That's very, very interesting. Thanks very much. And to me, there seems to be a lot of convergence between your mission and sustainability generally. And I think also with Islamic finance generally, the focus on the use of proceeds there's a lot of commonality with some of the work that's going on in some of the social and green bond markets. So I think that's a very interesting point to start to talk about. And you've already mentioned a little bit some of the work that you've been doing in green and social finance. You know, one of the things that's occurred as a result of the pandemic has been a real accelerator for the social bond markets, and you commented a little bit on that. We were a little worried that it might take the focus away from the green bond markets, but actually that's not been the case. We've seen that green finance has been very much hardwired into a lot of the recovery programs in many of the regions, and actually green finance is moving ahead very, very quickly indeed. But I'd be very interested to understand a little bit more how you align your issuances with, for example, the social bond principles, green bond principles, and how you expect this sector of your funding to grow in future in relation to your overall funding, and whether ultimately you would expect all of your funding to be able to be categorized as green or social, certainly sustainable bond issuance. How do you see that developing?
No, thank you, Martin. Martin, I think, when I came to the IDB, one thing was very obvious, that IDB was doing sustainability was high on the agenda, and it was doing sustainable development for a long time, but it was not kind of presented in that way. So I would say that we have a long history of our commitment to sustainability. We are a signatory of Sustainable Development Goals, and for a long time, as you know, that we have been following the principle of do no harm in our project design, and that's not something new. Also, if you look at the core principles of Islamic finance or economics, it does mandate us as an institution to do more social and economic justice, and in terms of promoting those projects which has these kind of outcomes, and also have leave a certain impact. Now, more recently, since the climate change, IDB has a very well-defined climate change policy and a commitment to support our own MCs, member countries, in their low carbon, climate resistant, sustainable development. The climate action plan, which we did, has also shows how we are committed, that we have made a commitment which we made at COP25 last year, December, that by 2025, 35% of our overall lending have to comply with the principles of sustainable or climate change goals. So in that sense, our commitment is there, and gradually we are getting into that, achieving that towards that our target. Now, what this target is, this target aims us to, on a long-term trajectory to proactively align our own financing with increasingly ambitious climate change objectives, recognizing that our member countries are highly vulnerable to climate change impacts. Now, if Martin, if you may be, or our viewer may be aware that all the discussion which took place in recent World Bank IMF annual meetings, one of the key theme was that the recovery of the post-COVID economies have to be green. So therefore, our focus is going to be going to be how do we make sure that our intervention to recovery in the post-COVID-19 recovery is also not only resilient but also green, and of course is sustainable. So, I mean, in general, we have a very long commitment and history with both with the SDGs as well as the with sustainable with the climate change. Now, more recently, what we have done, we have established our sustainable finance framework. Last year it was done, and we follow ICMA's green and social bond principles and sustainability bond guidelines. The framework served as a foundation for our green bond issuance last year, November, and then for the this year for the COVID-19. So once again, we really appreciate the work for ICMA, which has helped us in getting a jump start on these initiatives. So to have a very short answer, that in as far as we are concerned, we have a very strong commitment to the sustainability, SDGs, the green and social principles. And I think we have a commitment that our financing will certain percentage will be earmarked for the climate change related projects. We over the period of time, we will build enough large portfolio so that we could issue more green and sustainable bonds down the road. So I think what I believe that this is just a beginning for us, but we will catch up very soon, and we have basically our plans to issue either green or sustainable or impact bonds, a benchmark bond every year, so that our investors who are they are expecting us to be in the market, and we plan to be there on a regular basis.
That's wonderful to hear. I think sustainability is such a global theme at the moment. It's great to hear that it's something you're embracing so fully and moving towards that in sort of all aspects of what you do. I want to focus a little bit on some of the activities perhaps outside the Gulf region. You have so many major hubs. You've got, I'm just looking at the paper here, Morocco, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, Senegal. You've got offices in Egypt, Turkey, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and I'm sure I've missed some here. And, you know, in Asia and in Africa, you've already mentioned that there is a good level of cooperation with other MDBs in the region, such as the African Development Bank and the Asian Development, also our members, by the way. Can you talk a little bit about that cooperation and perhaps identify any specific areas that you feel have been particularly successful?
Sure. Martin, you are absolutely right. Just to give you this thing, that about 3 years ago, our president gave a vision or a 5-year plan, what we call P5P, 5-year plan. And one of the core theme, there were two core pillars. One of the core pillar was to decentralize ourselves. We were in the headquarters mostly. We had a small representative offices, but starting about 2018, we made a decision that we will be expanding our presence in the field, being close to our clients and be close to our member countries. So there are going to be, we have about 11 hubs from, I think you forgot Bangladesh in your list. So we have, all the way ranging from Almaty, Kazakhstan in Central Asia to Suriname in Latin America. So we have a presence. And one of the common mistakes which many investors think, that they think that we are either a local Saudi bank or we are a GCC bank. And one of the challenge which what I see when I go on road shows, to tell them that we are actually like Asian Development Bank and African are regional development bank. We are beyond regional because we are all over the 3 different continents. So in that sense, we need to kind of increase our awareness, and I'm sure that investor will be maybe will be beneficial for them to know our presence. Now, as far as the cooperation is concerned, maybe one more thing I want to maybe mention. As you know, that I mentioned our president was leading the group of the heads of MDBs. And during this all COVID, one thing was very clear, that we as an MDB or as the stakeholders, we need to have much more better coordination to fight with post-COVID, to achieve the rapid recovery after COVID-19. So under that theme, I have observed in last few years, our cooperation with other MDBs have increased. Last year, for example, we signed a MOU with the EIB, basically agreeing to do joint co-financing was $2 billion over next couple of years. Similarly, we have others. We have one infrastructure fund together with Asian Development Bank, and we have many co-financing projects with other MDBs, including the World Bank. We, in addition, it's not only the MDBs. We are cooperating many of the UN agencies. We have established a good relationship with UNDP. For example, one of our core intervention for the COVID-19 is through providing them immediate the medicine and the ventilators and all the other necessary equipment. And some of these are implemented through the UNDP because they have a presence on the ground in the member countries. We provide the financing and they become our implementation agent or the partner in that sense. So I do see that although we have a good partnerships already and collaboration, I see that expanding much more. Maybe I can also mention that, as you may be aware, that now next week is going to be a very big event called Finance in Common, which is going to be all the public development banks, which will be all gathered together, discussing about the challenges of developments. And I'm very pleased to share with you that IDB is one of the grand partners of this event, because we believe that it's very important for all these stakeholders to come together, and because we face the same common problem, our goal is the same, and we could do it much better by coordinating together, by teaming up with together and collaborating together. So I do believe that area will be much more expanding, and you will see us being involved in many more initiatives going forward.
That's very interesting, and I think it's very apparent to us the level of cooperation amongst the MDBs, amongst the sovereigns, amongst the agencies as well. Very important, and we've been very pleased to see that you've joined our public sector issuer forum recently and are being an active member of that. And that all contributes to that level of cooperation and mutual understanding. Very good. Well, thank you very much for that. We always are interested in the future, and obviously we've seen a huge challenge with the pandemic, and the socioeconomic challenges as a result of the pandemic will continue for some time to come. I'd be interested to see from you where you see for your bank the major challenges, and perhaps what, you know, challenges. The other side of the coin is always opportunity, and where do you see the opportunities lying for the Islamic Development Bank?
Thank you, Matt. Look, I think we all know our challenges. One of the biggest challenges is the growing funding gap to meet the sustainable development goals, and now with meeting the challenges in the for the post COVID recoveries. And we also have to face the issues of the debt sustainability, debt vulnerability of many of the developing countries, which all MDBs are facing. We are all in the same boat. So from that angle, I think our biggest challenge is how can we mobilize more financing at a cost-effective rate so that our member countries can benefit from it. We do plan to expand our funding program, and we do plan to continue, in a sense, come up maybe more instruments how we could, attract more investors. However, we all know that we cannot do it alone. I mean, that is the given the, and one of the theme which comes out for all the MDBs, that we need to bring the private sector into as a stakeholder. We need to get their skin in the game, or they have to play a role in helping us achieving the sustainable development in these member countries. So from that angle, we have recently also introduced a COVID-19 guarantee facility, where we will be guaranteeing providing some of the line of financing in select member countries, so that we could also attract funding from the private sectors and other sources, which we could kind of make it available for our member countries, where our own guarantee can help attract some of these private sector investors, and also incentivize them to come into this into development. So our challenges, as I mentioned, is that how do we fill that funding gap? How do we attract, incentivize the private sector to come into the in terms of financing? How do we make sure that we have enough capacity building within our member countries to have an efficient project implementation? How do we make sure that we are also at the same time, as I mentioned, that the theme is that the recovery has to be resilient as well as green. So how we balance all these things? So this is a challenge which we are facing. Now I come to more specific to the capital markets. In a sense, I think from the capital market perspective, I really appreciate that the platform provided by ICMA, so we can get our voice out to the potential listeners. But we believe that we need to be much more known into the market, so that investors know our value proposition, that we do provide a ethical, responsible finance, which leads to a sustainable development our member countries, which ranges from Africa to Asia and all over the globe. So main thing over this, our challenge is that how do we ensure that the recovery in our member countries is speedy, and then they have the funds available which they need, so that they do not fall into the trap where the poverty line, which these countries had come out in a very we were making very good progress in terms of getting the member countries out of poverty. We do not want them to fall back into below the poverty line. So these are some of the challenges, and that's where we believe that our work, which we are doing with the help of our investors, can make a lasting impact in the lives of our member countries.
I think that's right, and I think you've done a fabulous job in terms of improving the familiarization of the investor community globally with the work that you do and the investment opportunity that you provide. But it sort of leads on to a more general question about Islamic finance as a whole. And is there still a lot of work to do, in your opinion, in raising the level of awareness and the level of understanding of Islamic finance and where that fits in the global finance framework?
No, thank you, Marty. I totally, again, it's a no-brainer. Indeed, I think we do need to raise the awareness about the value proposition of Islamic finance. And I think, again, I come back to this, my earlier notion that even that one should, or the investor should not look at as this thing as the label of Islamic finance as something very, kind of exotic or, different kind of a thing, which is very, local or whatever. Islamic finance basically as a financial engineering, different kind of structures requiring certain principles. Think of this as you can go to a financial engineer, ask them to structure something, and they can structure it. Now, what label you give is a different thing. But if you look at the core basic ideas, you will see a lot of merits in it. In the merits in this, that this kind of finance is not only pro-development, it is also much more stable because asset base, it has no kind of a leverage issue is not there. With that, because of that issues, investors who know the product very well, they really appreciate the economics of the product as well. So in a nutshell, I believe that there's much more work needs to be done in terms of spreading the word of taking I would say the apprehension or the fear about the word Islamic finance, but look at the product, what it offers, and how it is making a contribution towards the development. I think that is very important. And as one of the mandate of our IDB is to promote Islamic financial industry or Islamic capital markets in our member countries and somewhere else, we are committed to it very much, and we believe that we have come a long way. That it was many kind of as I said, that in last few years we have made quite a big presence overall, and I hope that going forward we'll continue to provide much more awareness so that the investors can get an appreciation of the value proposition offered by Islamic finance. And Islamic finance is not just only financing, of a scoop, but it has a much wider impact overall both at micro and macro level. So I do agree with you that we need to continue. Now, as we go with it, we are now also embarking and embedding basically our own commitment to green and climate action and sustainability, because we do not see any conflict with it. Actually, we embrace it because this is very much what the principles or the teaching of this basic core principles of Islamic finance are.
I think that's right. And, I think, as I said earlier, I think the convergence between sustainability and Islamic finance, I think, is a very interesting topic to discuss further. And it's been very good to see that the general level of understanding of the value proposition, as you put it, of Islamic finance has grown dramatically over the last decade. But of course, there is still further to go. And I think at ICMA, we're very committed to work with you to help in that process in whatever way that we can. Now, I think we will probably coming to the end of the discussion, but before we break, Zamir, I just wonder, are there any closing comments you'd like to make about the institution, about any of your future plans, or any of the issues that you had in the past where you use those as learnings to change the way that you do your business in the future?
Well, thank you, Martin. First of all, I once again want to thank you and ICMA for giving me opportunity to giving me platform so I could make a case for IDB. I think as far as going forward is one of the things which our president and the senior management is that we need to be becoming much more agile, because the dynamics of our needs of our member countries are as such that it is changing very rapidly. As we still not sure about the recovery from COVID, we still do not know the outlook, whether it's going to be a V shape or W shape or L shape or U shape recovery. There are a lot of uncertainties. So what we are doing is we are watching the situation very, very closely. We are saying that what is the best way we could serve our member countries, so that their exposure to any aftermath of COVID-19 are minimized and they're back on their feet as quickly as possible. And in that, I would really request that this is something which we cannot do it alone. We need to have support from our other stakeholders who believe in sustainable development, and they want to support sustainable development, to join our hands either as our investors or our other co-financers or in any other capacity, so that we can build our member countries together, so that we can improve the lives of poor people in our member countries. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think that is a very noble objective, and it's certainly something that we would like to continue to work with you on. And we wish you absolutely every success in achieving that and in your funding program and in the way that you're developing your bank and Islamic finance as a whole. What advice would you give us as to how best to be able to support this mission?
Thank you, Martin. As I said earlier, that I really appreciate ICMA giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. And I think as we have learned a lot from ICMA through green and sustainable social bond principles and things, I think certainly it can be a two-way learning experience. We can help ICMA and its members taking the kind of giving them a capacity building or giving them more awareness about the nuts and bolts of Islamic finance. And maybe they could benefit down the road, because there's about more than $1 trillion industry, and they do need all sorts of innovative products too, because there's quite a bit excess liquidity available. So I think ICMA, we can collaborate with ICMA in providing some sort of a dedicated capacity building program, some training or some awareness events or something. We are open to the idea, and that is, as one of our mandate is to develop this industry. We would like to collaborate or partner with ICMA. So I leave it to you that whichever way you think we can serve, ICMA will be available for you at your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Zamir. There are lots of interesting ideas there, and we will certainly be taking you up on that and looking to move this agenda forward. Thank you very much, Zamir. This is Martin
My
Scheck
pleasure.
Speaking with Dr. Zamir Iqbal, the Vice President Finance and CFO of the Islamic Development Bank. Thank you for listening.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your invitation.